So, folks, I just talked about a very old record of mine, my remix of Quincy Jones' Stomp from 1996. And it still rocks the dance floors today, but obviously now I'm speaking about a track that I recently did. Tell the World from Norman Doray, featuring the beautiful Sneaky Sound System out of Australia, released on CR2 Records. And as I initially said, I don't want to go into technical stuff in depth. I want to tell you though, because I was preparing for this session, and my computer crashed, and I lost all the session, all the data. No joke. So basically, now pro tip number one: save your stuff. You know, save it and save it again on another hard drive or in the cloud or whatever. So I was basically suckered, very, very bad for me. And so I want to talk a little bit more about like some elements that are used on this track, some very important elements like keys and the bass, which is very dear to me, vocals, harmonic structure, and like more about the philosophy, like how I get inspired and how I did the mix that I did actually for this. And again, I got the remix parts, and I really like the vocals on this. Great vocals. And then I stumbled over this little part in the vocals. Great ad-lib. And this really triggered me. I was like, hang on, this really rings a bell. And I was like, man, this is like the in Robin S.'s Show Me Love, kind of like the vibe, of it. And I was like, oh man, I really want to do a mix like that, which basically means great beats and a kick-ass bass line. So I did some cool beats, like some cool disco housey kind of sounds. Actually, all these sounds of this mix, for instance, you can find on my latest sample CD. Like a sample CD that I recently did for Sample Tools by CR2. And I think I did like some sample CDs like I think 25 years ago or something. So this one is really recent. Has a lot of my recent sounds that I use, very, very handcrafted and beautiful sounding. And and these sample sounds, like how I use now, I basically either program using audio, like having like audio kick drum or something, which I'll then like put my patterns on in my Logic session, or I use basically like little sample loops or something, which again you find in my sample pack. This is how I did this beats. Some keyboards. Actually, let me play you the original track first. I'm really sorry that I can't go into the original session, but I'm sure you'll forgive me. Nice build up. That's the bass line I was talking about. And so on. So yeah, that's really very important to me because obviously with these kind of elements, I mean, this bass line, when you hear it, it's immediately recognizable, which is great for your art. If people can hear straight away, it's like, hey, that's a mix from such and such, or it sounds like this and blah blah blah. So I always try to look for these kind of like hook lines, whether it's great vocal chords or a bass line. So I reconstructed the bass line, luckily enough. You can see here in my not in the original session, but in this session, basically it's it's this versatile synth called Spire, and it has this sound. And then I was like, all right, let's do this. Great playing. Sorry. Cool, no? Synth 5 is beautiful. I put like a little, to make it a little warmer, like a virtual tape machine from Zinio Digital on this, which I do all the time on digital keys. I always cut off lows and highs most of the time, like to make it a little warmer. But this is basically the bass line of this mix. In the mix, when I used it, I think I doubled it with like a kind of subby kind of bass, just to give it a little bit more oomph. Cool, no? Yeah, and then, I told you before, I'm a sucker for great chords. And I was like, okay, this is gonna work, like nice beats, a great bass line, a great vocal. But why don't we go a step further? And somehow this triggered me again, the bass line, because there's this great mix that David Morales did on Incognito, Always There, on their cover version on Always There, the old Ronnie Laws classic. And they had this great like keyboard pattern, it was almost the same. Really cool. So I was like, all right, I'm feeling that. What did I play back then? I used a couple of great keyboards that I then layered, but this special one is basically, I love. It was an old synth on from Native Instruments, and I loved it so much. Called Pro 53, so it's like a Pro Prophet 5 clone or something. But I couldn't use it on my new updates on Logic and stuff. So what I did, like a friend of mine helped me for this. I had to bridge it with a couple of tricks. But now I can use it, and this has amazing sounds. It's like really. Really cool, dope sounds. I'm using this a lot. But probably any actually I have a Pro Prophet 10 over there, like the real one, but that probably goes too far here. So yeah, and then I got the bass line, I got the keys to it. Really cool. So this one I called Mousse's 90s shizzle mix because of this whole Robin S approach. Go check it out, Norman Doray, Tell the World. And yeah, basically, like the Quincy Jones I was telling you about initially. It's like it's all about the bass. It's all about the keys, great vocal, great great beats for me. So it's more about like the philosophy, how you approach a track. If don't go like too much, don't have too much of a formula. Obviously it's great if you have your signature sounds that you always like to use, but always be open. Just let yourself, let yourself be triggered by like vocals or like by great audio signals, that you are able to use, which is amazing. So yeah, this is basically how I work. It's I have my setup, but I'm almost handling every production that I do and every remix that I do as my almost like as if it would be my first production ever. I'm like really kind of like scrapping all my sounds, starting from scratch. And again, my sample pack's going to help you with a couple of like really cool beats and like sounds. And I think the bass sound of this is on that pack as well. So you can start doing some stuff and then probably take it from there. And again, my advice is, if you can cut up sounds, like do it, put it into a sampler, cut it up, try to replay stuff, in your style, come up with own original key lines or bass lines or something. And another tip of mine is obviously if you could try to combine digital and analog sound, it's beautiful. It does something to your sound, and you always have this kind of like this kind of like almost esoteric movement in your music, that you almost can't describe in words, and it's really helpful. So these are my tips, and a couple of plugins that I definitely like to use. I mean, I can show you here on my screen. I got all the universal audio stuff, which is great, if you want to have the analog simulation. Although, I mean, obviously I have a couple of analog bad boys here that are always using, the SSL stereo compressor, which is great. Couple of distressors, Uri, the Ensoniq DP4, obviously my samplers are still used, LA2A rebuild, couple of Neve preamps, that sometimes if I do a bass line like this, I just like put it through that preamp, just gets a whole new dimension, it's crazy. So I do that, but I have these beautiful plugins. So I got the universal audio stuff. I love the Sound Toy stuff, which is great. I use that all the time. Set Digital is very dear to me. It's great. I do love, which I can recommend you on almost anything, whether it's like beats or keyboards, sometimes vocal. It's the Kickstart of Nicky Romero. Well done, Nicky. It's a simple plugin, but it really works. It's basically like a sidechain plugin, but it's really easy to use, and it immediately gives your music a modern touch, without being too EDM, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah, I got that. Let me see what kind of keyboards or analog. I mean, I love the Logic stuff, to be honest. I just recently learned that Disclosure, on their first albums, they used entirely only all the Logic plugins, and obviously their stuff sound amazing. So, well done, guys. I told you about the Spire, the keyboards. I got the Native Instrument stuff. Arturia, very cool. I got the whole Analog Lab bundle, which is amazing. So you got all the like vintage keys on there. All the like Prophet, the OBX stuff. A couple of Mini Moog stuff. Although I got the real stuff here as well. But sometimes I like to kind of try. It's great if you use the real hardware. But you don't have to all the time, because some of these bad boys are really, really cool. So yeah, that's basically about it. I hope you enjoyed this. Check out my music if you don't know it yet, and I hope to meet you on a dance floor real soon.